All right, everybody. Sports Card Strategy Show. I'm Paul Hickey with NoOffSeason.com. And I have a guest co-host with me today to talk NBA. It's my guy, Conner Barnett. He's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But before we get into our NBA talk, I'd like to thank our sponsor of today's show, MarketMoversApp.com by Sports Card Investor. Conner and I both really want you to go there and save 20% by using the promo code NOOFFSEASON, all lowercase. It's basically how I get paid for this show. So pretty important that you do that. And it's a great place to track the data of your cards. It's where I get all my data. And all right, so let's jump in. So Conner, thanks for joining me, man. We've been wanting to do this for a while. I appreciate you coming on to talk some NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Obviously, we got a little bit of a time change for us, so I'm glad we were able to find a time that worked for both of us. And I'm excited to get into it, see how your brain flows from the side of things. Because for me, it's really looking at stats every night, so it's a little different from sports cards. So I'm excited to see how our thoughts align and differentiate.
Yeah, for sure. So Conner's joining us at like 5 a.m. his time, and it's noon for me over in Europe. And yeah, we've been wanting to do this basically because I find it hard to find people that really geek out on the NBA. NBA obviously has done a great job and has a solid fan base, but when it comes to really getting into the statistics, the data, and really caring about sort of those guys that are outside of the rotation on your normal team that
Right.
could get into the rotation, I think you fall into the category of somebody that like you and I get together at a gathering of friends or something like that, and that's all we want to talk about.
Right.
So I'm excited to have you on. All right, so before we start really geeking out, why don't you tell us a little bit about like your background with sports cards? Like, I assume you collected as a kid, or at least maybe still have some cards at your parents' house and things like that, like we all do. So tell us about kind of your background with sports cards.
Sure. Yeah. So it was more like a reward thing for me as a kid. So if my grades were right and I was helping out around the house and like attitude was good, like every once in a while my dad would just show up in the mornings on a weekend with like a few packs of random cards. And obviously at the time I had no idea really to tell what was valuable, what wasn't, or at that age to even care really. To me it was just so cool, seeing all these random cards about guys I didn't know and just could learn about. Like I was so young, I would pull these cards out and like build a starting five and like set that against the starting five. And in my head, I'm like playing a game, which was fun for me. So, man, I got a shoebox full of it's got to be close to 5,000 cards. How much value is in there? I'm not exactly sure. I think I honestly have more football cards than I might have basketball, which is a little wild. But man, I got a bunch of like old school, like Jerry Stackhouse, the Drew Ilgauskas, guys like that. I need to go back through them and kind of see like, dang, this guy turned into something really big, but right now I don't really have a clue in terms of value.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the starting five. So I'm curious, like, what years were your main years of getting the reward from your parents and building those
Yeah.
starting fives? Like,
I
what was
think
kind of
I'd
the range?
be probably maybe age 6 or 7, probably up to like 10. It was probably like a 3 or 4 year stretch of that. And then it got to the point where I had so many, I was just asking for them for birthdays and stuff like that. And it was just like a go-to gift from people, which is cool. So, yeah, probably like first grade going up to all the elementary school pretty much.
Nice. So we're talking like Jason Kidd, Stephon Marbury,
Exactly. Yeah.
Kobe, some of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
You
that time
mentioned
range.
Jerry Stackhouse, who I'm familiar with because he was there when I was in Detroit working with the Pistons. So he was part of that like revival in '01,
Right.
which is big,
Yeah. That's awesome.
big for me. So yeah, that's cool. So yeah, for me, like fantasy sports was also always a big thing. And so finding my old sports card collection about a year ago really got me back into, you know, holy crap, this is kind of like a stock market, like doing a lot of research, understanding that the market has evolved to a point where each card has a particular value and based on player performance. I was surprised that the modern cards spike or drop based on player performance. And so then you've got the guys that we mentioned, like the guys that have already retired. There are different factors that can drive their card prices. Sometimes it's the Hall of Fame. Sometimes it might be something that they're doing in the mainstream media. Like we all saw The Last Dance. So a lot of those guys that were featured in that documentary have had their card prices drive up. And, so it's a little harder to play the market, so to speak, with vintage guys. But, with the current modern players and certainly the younger guys, their prices can be pretty volatile based on their player performance. So that's kind of what I wanted to gear today's discussion around with you, because I know you're into the sports betting side of things, right? So before I launch into, naming some guys, like why don't you give us an overview of what you've got going on with some of the betting that you do on like FanDuel and DraftKings and maybe some other platforms. Like walk us through kind of your day and your week with NBA stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a loyal FanDuel guy. I try getting on all these other platforms, and for some reason the interface, man, it's always FanDuel for me. But yeah, so basketball, like it's more so I think a discipline game, right? So I think it's really easy for a lot of people, especially my age, they're like in there, they're like, I just want to make a lot of money tonight or whatever, to like make a super hard parlay, throw $10 on it. It's only $10 you have in your account. You use it, don't hit the parlay, obviously, and you keep doing that. So to me, if you're trying to build like a base, it makes so much more sense to take much easier calculated risks, stay really disciplined, and kind of repeat the process. So what I like to do is break down individual player stats over the last couple weeks, month, whatever it may be, depending on how far we are into the season, and see what their low median of averages would be. And FanDuel has this thing where you can take alternate spreads. So I could look at points, rebounds, assists for a particular player I like, probably someone that's not a huge name on a huge market. For example, last year, Jeremy Grant was a huge winner for me and my roommate. They kept setting his line every night at like 21.5, 22.5, and we were getting alternate spreads on this guy at like 17.5 points, and it was just automatic every night. And then once you combine that in a parlay with some other guys where you're taking these alternate spreads, which don't give you as high of a return, after 3 legs, you're back to even odds. So you can put down $25, hit 3 different bets that are almost locks in one bet, and make your $25 on top of your 25 back. And if you can stay disciplined like that and try not to go for some crazy big winners, it's not crazy hard to stack up, a good month where you turn $25 into 200 or whatever it may be. So just try and stay consistent, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that there's some crossover with cards, and I'm curious to see your take on some of this stuff. So there's 4 guys that I've made a lot of money. Well, a lot of money. Like it's not like I've made thousands of dollars on these guys, but I've definitely like doubled or tripled or quadrupled my return on investment with the following guys. And it's a little bit of a different game because what you're trying to do, whereas like what you're doing on FanDuel, I wish I could be doing it right now, because I definitely have the thought of, okay, could a guy like Jeremy Grant make for a good prop bet? With his cards, for example, you have to pick a time where, for like right now, he's involved in a lot of trade rumors. And so now could actually be a good time to buy Jeremy Grant's card if you think he might get traded to a contender, out of Detroit. So that's going to be something that might drive up his card prices. But it's not to say that buying his cards right now wouldn't be a good play. It would just be more of a long-term play. But a few guys that I saw as really short-term plays at the beginning of this year that I made some moves on. One was Miles Bridges, Desmond Bane, Tyrese Maxey, and actually Grayson Allen. So those 4 guys, I was able to buy either their top-tier rookie cards and get them at a high grade and then flip them, or I was able to buy their rookie patch autos. So a rookie card that's been autographed that you don't need to get graded because based on their performance on the court, because it's an autographed rookie card, it's going to multiply the return on investment even more than if you just have just a regular rookie card without the autograph on it. So those 4 guys are guys that were able to kind of get in and quickly make an impact on their team, whereas they weren't really doing anything before. Now, we kind of saw it with Maxey at the end of last year. We didn't really see anything with Bane. And we didn't really see anything with Grayson Allen, but because their situations changed, we were kind of able to make that call. Are there any guys that you see as you're putting together these potential prop bets where you're like, okay, this is maybe more than just a good disciplined investment for FanDuel, but it might actually be a guy that can step out into the spotlight? And actually, I don't want to steal your thunder before you answer, but there's one guy that I haven't sold their cards yet, but I bought their cards a few months ago, and I'm waiting, and they've been doing well, and I've been waiting to sell them, and that's Darius Garland. I know you're probably pretty familiar with him from Vanderbilt. So are there any other, I guess, like Darius Garlands where you're like, okay, this is a guy that is under the radar right now. I've been looking at him because I've been looking at my stats spreadsheet. Maybe you've been putting bets on him, maybe you haven't, but you're sort of like waiting to a point where you think he's going to be a superstar or potentially like a potential all-star.
Sure. First, I love that you mentioned Miles Bridges, because I was speaking with you about that strike prediction thing. It was like a online, basically, stock market, and that was the only person I bought, which is so funny.
Okay.
And he ended up spiking. He had such a good beginning of the year. I think with LaMelo being so creative, it just frees him up to, make those backdoor cuts and just throw down oops all day. But Darius as well. Yeah, I actually played against Darius in high school in AAU. So getting to see how quick twitch he was right in front of your face was scary, and definitely gave some insight to like how insane these guys are at the next level. And I love Darius as a pick. I think that he plays so strategic and smart and picks his spots and gets to his spots on the floor. When you think about what Cleveland's done the last year and a half, I'm really excited for their future as a team in general. Just because I actually asked my friend this the other day. I said, if the Cavs right now could trade all their young core for LeBron James, do they do it? Because I think they're building such a good, healthy, young roster over there right now. It's almost like, and I'm don't take this too far, but it's almost like Golden State-esque, where you look at they're completely rebuilding. They're going from we believe, and now we just got a bunch of young guys who want to play together and are fitting as a team. You've got some vet leadership in Kevin Love. So I think Darius is a fantastic pick, assuming he wants to stay in that market. In terms of who else, that's tough. Darius would probably be my number one pick, to be honest with you.
I stole your thunder. Sorry about that.
A little bit. That's tough for me. Obviously, I think LaMelo Ball is going to be fantastic. I'm not sure how much of his value is already spiked in the card market because of how popular he was coming into the league. But I think as he continues to hone in his game and get more, I don't want to say fundamental, but just get more dialed. Like I said, get into his spots like Darius does, and he continues to be a more, I would say, efficient scorer. He's going to be scary. You put him on the right market with some good teams, they're going to be scary.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned LaMelo, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, who do you think's more likely to win a championship, Luka or LaMelo?
I think it's LaMelo. I love Luka.
Okay.
I like Luka a lot. However, he is so extremely ball-centric and has a slow game, right? His thing is big-time body positioning, getting angles, plays very slow and controlled. And with how quick today's league is, I think LaMelo's not that Luka's not an amazing passer and playmaker, but the speed at which LaMelo plays, I think will fit putting other stars around him a lot better than Luka. Just because, you think about when LeBron puts a bunch of guys on his team that are extremely talented, it's difficult for them to find that time to mesh, or the Nets right now, just because all these guys are so ball dominant. And if you have, 8-10 second possessions where you're holding the ball the whole time, it's very difficult for those other guys to get involved. So I think I'd go with LaMelo.
Yeah, I agree. You and I are seeing the same things there, and you're probably watching a lot more of the games than I am. But from what I have seen of Luka and LaMelo, and from what I've heard on some podcasts that I listen to, I feel like, LaMelo is more like the guy that's going to make everyone else around him better and keep the ball moving. Hence, like, Miles Bridges playing well, and like Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward and like Kelly Oubre. Everyone, like, I just don't know if Kelly Oubre is on Dallas, if he's anywhere near what he's, those kinds of things. So I just think that the casual basketball fan might think that LaMelo is more hype, but actually it's good to hear you say that you think LaMelo is legit and potentially going towards a title, because I see the same thing. And I think, and to what you said about LaMelo's card value, you're actually right. He's at a real high entry point right now because he came in with so much hype. So a LaMelo investment is a good one, but what I've actually written up in my sports card investment report, I'll shameless plug, go to nooffseason.com/invest and you can check that out. But what I've written in his report is that I actually wouldn't buy his singles until a couple years from now, because the pattern that I've seen is with each new class coming in, they get all that hype and then people start spending their big money on that hype. And what's happened with the supply chain issues in the last year or so is that they're actually still making LaMelo rookie cards, even though he's well into his second year. And so because of that, the price of his earlier rookie cards has continued to decline in spite of the fact that he's playing so well. So I think what investors should do is keep LaMelo like in your portfolio as a buy in 2024, because I think his prices will drop to the point where he'll hit a floor. And then I think the dude's going to win a championship like within the next 5 years. I really do. And that might be a ballsy call, but I really think that he's going to attract some free agents to Charlotte. I hope he stays in Charlotte. I like the storyline of Michael Jordan winning a championship as an owner also.
Yeah.
And that would be pretty sweet. But actually, let me ask you about this year's rookie class, because I'm super high on this year's rookie class, and I'm interested to see like kind of how you would rank them maybe as long-term guys, because I recently put out a video that I really wouldn't advise buying any of the new releases. There's really only been one release out, NBA Hoops. But if you compare the prices, like Joshua Primo, his rookie auto, for example, is like over $100. But if you think about Tyrese Maxey's rookie auto is
Right.
under $100. So like, if I'm going to advise you, for example, or anyone listening or watching, like buy Tyrese Maxey, like buy Tyrese Maxey for $80 rookie auto before you dump $113 on Joshua Primo, right? Because you don't know what Joshua Primo, for example, is going to be, but you
Right.
kind of know you kind of see what Tyrese Maxey is going to be. So my question to you is like, who do you think, and I can list some guys out if it helps you, but who do you think in this year's rookie class are going to be, let's say maybe 2, 3, 4 years from now, guys where we're like, okay, this is the AD, this is the Kawhi, this is the Paul George, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's kind of the top guys.
Yeah. First of all, I think this year's rookie class is phenomenal. I think there is so much talent in this year's rookie class. In terms of guys that I think are going to evolve, it's hard not to go with the big names that got picked. They just have so much talent. And a lot of these guys, obviously they're early picks in the draft, so they're going to not great markets, not great teams. And their teams are playing well. And if they're not playing well, they still have huge contributions night in and night out. First name that comes to mind is Evan Mobley. I don't know if it's Mobley or Mobley, over in Cleveland. Man, he is a force defensively. They've got that set up right now where there's times when they have 3 7-footers in, which allows us to see his versatility more so than if he was just the only 7-footer and he's really having to play, in the semicircle and hands up and all in the block, because we get to see him moving around a little bit and in transition, which is exciting. And we can see how well he moves. You mentioned AD. He's obviously not refined like AD, but he moves. They just move like deer. I think he's going to be really good moving forward. I'm huge on Cade Cunningham. His demeanor and his game is so pro already as a rookie. It's unbelievable. And coming off injury, I think I'm really excited to see him keep getting his feet wet in the league, and I think he's going to be a beast. Jalen Green is someone for me that I was really high on. Watched him play with the G League Ignite for a little bit, and then obviously in high school he was unbelievable. He's probably the most freak athlete in that class, so I was extremely high on him coming in. Thought he was going to have a huge ceiling, but his efficiency just isn't quite there right now. And obviously being over in Houston, they're having some problems as a team. But I'm curious to see what he would look like in a different market on a different team, maybe with a little more structure in place, because he's a freak athlete. Um, that's about all I got for you.
Yeah, those are good picks. I mean, I'm with you on Mobley, Cunningham, Green. I think those are probably the smart investments in the card space as the releases come out. They're still yet to release a lot of the premier sort of card brands. So, for example, Prism and Optic, they don't come out for a while. Don Russell come out next. Hoops is out, and the prices of this year's class are just like through the roof. Like anyone drafted in the first round, their rookie auto is over $100, which is just insane. And like Jalen Green's rookie auto is going for $300, $400, $500. Here are some other guys that I get excited about. In no particular order, but I just kind of want to geek out with you about these guys. Like I think that obviously Scottie Barnes is probably the next guy that you didn't say that is maybe an obvious call. From what I've heard about him, he's so versatile that he kind of transcends the different positions, which I think is good for the sports card investor because you're wanting there's always a bigger market for guards, right? So if you get a guy like Scottie Barnes who can match up against guards and handle the ball, and I haven't seen Evan Mobley play, but I hear he can play multiple positions as well. The other two guys you mentioned are guards. So I think like Mobley and Barnes fit in as good sports card investments as well. So I'm interested in your take on Scottie Barnes. Let's go one by one. What do you know, and what have you seen about Scottie Barnes?
I can't believe I missed that one. That's a big name. He reminds me of Draymond Green, who I think is arguably the most valuable player on Golden State. You can see what Golden State looks like the last 2 weeks or so without Draymond. It's so different. The ball movement and the focus on like the structure that he sets up throughout the offense is insane. And Scotty reminds me of it just with how versatile he is. I don't think he has the floor vision or the knowledge quite that Draymond obviously has, but Scotty's going to be good. He can do anything. He can guard, I would say he can guard 1 through 5 right now, which is, I don't know how many rookies you've been able to say that about the last 15 years. He can dribble the ball down the floor in transition, which is huge right now. I haven't seen him shoot the ball a ton, but his touch seems fine pretty much anywhere he's touching the ball. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what Toronto as a team is going to do. Because it seems like every year they're struggling, and then you look up and it's like they're 45-20 right now or something crazy. So I'm excited to see. And they never have a ton of talent, it seems like. So I'm excited to see how he's going to fit in that offense, especially with Pascal, because I feel like we will have to see how versatile Scotty is because Pascal is also a versatile forward. So when you have two of those guys in at the same time, it's interesting to see how they factor off each other. But I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I think I like Toronto. I like they're one of my new favorite teams to play with in 2K. So I was it's my only game I can beat Max in consistently. So I was the Raptors against him the other day, and it was fun. I think if they can keep that nucleus together, they'd be fun to watch for a long time. And I think Scottie Barnes will be a good sports card investment, along with the guys you mentioned. The thing that I love the Draymond Green comparison, by the way. That's a great call. I think like I'm huge on Draymond. He's one of my favorite players. I'm biased because I'm a Michigan State guy, and I agree. I just like Draymond's game. And he definitely is the X factor for Golden State. And I love the comparison. I think if Scottie Barnes ends up being like too much like Draymond Green, he may not have as high a ceiling in the hobby because people love the highlight reel plays. But if Scottie can also have like sick breakaway dunks or catch alley-oops from Van Vliet or whatever, like then he could kind of be really that do-it-all guy and that scorer, then I think his card prices could be ridiculous, and he could be one of the best buys in this whole class. A couple other guys, I'll throw out multiple names now because I think they all kind of go together. I think Josh Giddey could be an amazing buy just because he's that 6'8" point guard he's almost like a 6'8" Jason Kidd kind of.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like maybe that's the best comparison I can come up with on the fly. I think Jonathan Kuminga. I've heard a lot of people mention him as like this sleeper of the draft that could end up actually being the best player long term. And he seems to be just being in Golden State is kind of scary. I saw him put up like 23 the other night or something like
Yeah,
that with Draymond
an
out.
efficient 23.
An efficient 20, yeah, in like 17 minutes or
Yeah.
something crazy like that. And so let's go with Giddey, Kuminga, and then another guy that I think is interesting because he's playing with Ja and he's starting due to some injuries on the Grizzlies. And what could generate some more hype for him is I think he played with Bronny James in high school, is Zaire Williams. He just looks like maybe the Miles Bridges Jr. or something like that. But what's your take on those three guys?
Starting with Giddey, I'm a huge Giddey fan. I like all these Euro stars, man. They're so much fun to watch because you get to see the differences in our game versus over in Europe. And a lot of those guys in Europe, hate to say it, they just play the game the right way, and he's one of them. He does not care if he's going to take 2 shots or 30. He's going to do whatever happens based on the flow of the game and whatever he needs to do to try to help his team win. I think OKC right now, like, they have no business being in as many late games against good teams as it seems like they have. And he's a big portion of why, because he has some games where he has 12 assists and he took 3 shots. And it's like, this guy's a rookie. And to have that kind of, I guess, like poise and maturity for the game, I think is good. So I'm not sure how long he's going to stay in OKC, but if he moves to a contender, he also has like just that big playmaking factor that you put him on any team and he can probably fit in really well. I'm pretty big on him. That's another good name. In terms of Kuminga, I am a little curious to see what happens with him just because I feel like Golden State is so deep right now that and they're in a chance of a title run, right? And we got to assume that this is towards the tail end of, Steph, Clay, one of the greatest runs that we've seen, especially with Clay getting hurt and all that. But I'm worried about how his development is going to go in a championship run season, and how long they'll want to keep him, whereas they're going to have to get even more depth once these main guys start getting out of the league. So in terms of talent, absolutely there. If you watch them on the Ignite, it's crazy. Bouncy, can shoot the ball, can play probably 2 through 4 really, just because he's so athletic. So I think he's going to be really good too. It's just I'm not sure. Like you look at Wiseman with Golden State, obviously he's been hurt, but he was putting up such good numbers to start. Like he was playing like 15 minutes and putting up 10 and 10. But they didn't like the way that he played in their offense. He just didn't have the movement down and all that, and they felt like it slowed them down on offense. So I'm just curious to see how development goes for guys over in Golden State. I would imagine it would go well considering who they have as veteran leadership, but I guess he could be a sleeper for someone that's really low value right now just because he doesn't get a ton of time, and he could be good just because of how much talent he has. And then we look at Zaire. Is it Zaire or Zaire?
I say Zaire, but I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly.
Gotcha. Yeah. To be honest, I haven't watched him a ton, but he seems to be like that third kind of glue guy for them right now, which I'm just like a huge fan of the glue guy on every team. So it's fun to watch him kind of come in and have those. I think I've probably watched him play 2 or 3 games, but it seems like each game he comes in and he's not really doing a whole lot. And then he has like a 4 or 5 minute spurt where it's like he just pinned that off the glass. Then he caught a lob in transition, and now he's making defensive stops. So those kind of guys are always fun to watch. I think he can definitely be special. I'm not sure how much the market plays into these cards. I think he'll probably have to get out of Memphis to really see himself shine, especially with what Jaw's about to do to the league.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's actually one thing I wanted to talk to you about. I feel like we've got some good momentum going on the player analysis, but let's take a little sidebar here. The market does play a factor, and one of the things that I'm trying to stay like you talk about discipline in sports betting, and I'm trying to stay disciplined in what my buys and my recommendations are for sports card investing, because the market plays a role, but also are you the number one guy in that market also plays a role. So for example, like if you're trying to determine, should I buy Jason Tatum or Jalen Green? Like who's the number one? Like is it like, and that's just an example. And so like, does it make sense? Like I already have a bunch of Ja cards and a bunch of Jaren Jackson Jr. cards. And I'm sitting here like really enjoying what the Grizzlies are doing right now because I'm thinking I could probably sell any of these cards at any time right now and, at least break even or potentially make like 10, 20% on these guys. I could wait and see if they make sort of an improbable run in the West. If that does happen in the next 2 or 3 years while they're together, the card prices could spike and I could, 5, 6x the investment. Then you look at a guy like Zaire, when his card prices inevitably come down next year, after next year's rookie class comes out, should I buy Zaire and now have 3 guys on the Grizzlies? That's kind of like, it's a similar concept to like the fantasy sports thing. Like, should I have too many guys in the same offense,
Right.
So it does come into play. And I think you bring up a good point that you definitely have to analyze, like, is this going to be a guy that I can make 5% on, or is this a guy that I can make 50 to 100 to 200% on? And Zaire might fall into kind of the 5% category. Like I think Cam Johnson's a good example. I see maybe Zaire being like a version of a Cam Johnson in the card market. Like
Sure.
when Phoenix made their run last year, Cam Johnson's cards went up. But like that's it. That's the window for Cam Johnson. Like there's no other window. So I think Zaire is a guy like that. I like a lot of other guys in this draft, but there's one guy, like there's actually 2 guys. Let me get your opinion on who's going to be better. I'm not going to name off all the guys I like because then everyone is going to be like, well, you just named off the whole first round. But I think so. The Nuggets the biggest thing on the Nuggets is like they need a number 2 behind Jokic, right? And
Right.
obviously Jamal Murray is going to come back at some point. We don't know if Michael Porter Jr. is ever going to come back, which is super sad. But Nashawn Bones Hyland, the 26th overall pick from Virginia Commonwealth, looks pretty good so far in his rookie year. Is he a guy that is going to have potential to be like a number 2 in Denver ever? So he's one guy. Now the other guy I'm looking at is Cam Thomas, who was actually drafted right after Bones Hyland, and he's in Brooklyn, and he's behind Kyrie. But like, is he somebody who could slide in maybe if they trade Harden or something like that? Who do you like between those 2 guys as like if you had to buy their card, knowing what you
I'm
know
going
about the
with Cam
factors of
Thomas.
sports card investing? Okay.
It's not close for me.
Why Cam Thomas? Why isn't it close? Go for it.
So Bones Hyland, that's how you say it correctly? Yeah.
Yep.
He has the fortunate scenario right now where he gets to play with Jokic, right? So, and not that Cam Thomas isn't getting to play with stars because he is, but they're very different stars. Jokic, anytime he catches the ball on the elbow, which it seems like he does 45 times a game, every single defender that's around him takes at least a step towards him, which makes it so much easier for these role players and anyone that can spot up in the corner to have solid games. And if you can defend well, offense is going to come so easy to you because of what Jokic is, his vision, the presence he commands, and all that. So I think it's been a lot easier for him to show his ability more so than Cam Thomas. But Cam Thomas is almost the opposite, right? He's playing with all these stars that are very ball-centric. And the fact that we see these spurts from him, and I don't know if it was Summer League, but I'm pretty sure he had a couple games in a row in the Summer League where he dropped like 35, and it was like the first player to ever do it that was a rookie. So I think it's more impressive to see what Cam Thomas is doing, especially because he almost is in a scenario where if you're a young role player in a team with a bunch of stars that are very ball-centric, it's difficult for those guys to show what they can do. And the fact that we're having the same conversation as someone who has a facilitator to help his game, to me, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, you're right. And this is why I needed to talk to you, because not only do you understand the NBA and all these little intricacies, but they do relate to the hobby big time. They do relate to sports card investing. Like the difference that you just pointed out between Cam Thomas and Bones Hyland is actually one where there is a line. And if you can create your own shot and be the guy, you have the sky's the limit in terms of your ceiling on your card prices versus like what you're saying about Bones, where if he's a role player, now he might be a flashier role player than some, but if he's just a role player, then he's going to have a really low ceiling on his card prices. So that makes a ton of sense. All right, cool. Well, we've talked a lot about these young guys. Let's get into more of the veterans. So I'm curious as to your take. Like, sometimes I forget, and I'm reminded like during the playoffs and during like as we're talking right now, they just had the AFC and NFC championship games last night, and I'm reminded like, okay, in any sport, the thing that drives card prices up the most is winning, getting to the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals or the World Series, and ultimately winning the championship. So if we're talking about guys like Ja, Luka, and Trae, who do you think out of those three guys, if you had to say invest $500 into one of those guys' cards for this season, and let's just even say next season also, like next 2 years, who is most likely to make a run out of those three at their respective conference championships and maybe even get to the NBA Finals? And they're all pretty mediocre. I mean, other than I mean, I know the Mavericks have been playing well. I know the Grizzlies have been like out of this world. The Hawks really aren't. Like they are in the 10th spot if the season ended today, so they're in that play-in. So it is a tough question. So yeah, I think you might have to dig deep here. I think it's tough to say, but it's ultimately like who's more likely to win a championship is basically the question.
What's the time frame that we're looking at?
So let's say let's give it 2 years from today, which I guess would be technically like a 3-year buying window, because if you're buying 2 years from today, then that would include like that next year's championship.
Sure. Okay. I think I'm going with Ja. But if it was like a 5 or 6 year thing, I definitely would not, because he scares me in the way that he's bouncy and moves like D Rose and like Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook has been very durable for his play style, but I get scared with injuries with Ja. Very scared, and I feel like he could get burnt out pretty quickly. He's putting a lot of stress on those knees when he's jumping 50 inches in the air. But short term, the way that their team is built right now is so classic Grizzly of like grit and grind and like, we're going to outwork y'all. We're going to play defense. We're going to get to the rim. Like, we're just going to show up in the stadium and outwork y'all every play. Which to me, that is such a big characteristic for winning teams. Obviously, the Grizzlies don't really have a huge pedigree of winning. But I think, especially in today's league, if you can show up and look at a team in the playoffs and say, yeah, we're about to outwork you, I think that is huge. And it builds a lot of camaraderie around the team. 2, I would go with Luka. Unfortunately, I have to put Trae last, which is sad, because a couple of years ago when they got John Collins and they got Cam Reddish and they were building some pieces, I was like, this might be a scary little team that they're putting together. It didn't pan out quite how I thought. I'm not sure what direction Atlanta's really trying to go. And, they just got rid of Cam Reddish. I like Herter a lot, but it seems like they don't have the veteran leadership, right? So all these guys are so young. And I think there's a huge premium in the NBA on guys that know how to win late game and in the playoffs. And they just don't really have any of those guys, unfortunately, that have the experience. They definitely have the talent. So I'm curious to see what it will take for Atlanta to try and get over that hump. And then I got Luka in the middle as my 2 pick to invest in, just because he just puts up a 25-point triple-double every night.
Yeah.
And I think the triple-double is a little bit overlooked in today's NBA. When you look at possessions per game compared to what it used to be, 20 years ago, we see the speed of the game is crazy different. And there's so many more threes shot. It allows these guys to put up triple doubles a lot easier, I think, than it used to be. But that being said, it's still impressive what his numbers are. It just seems like he's going to have to learn to trust his teammates a little bit more to carry some of the flow of the game, because, I mean, you look at some of the games he plays and it's 5-6 possessions in a row where he's not passing the ball until there's – he's good at it. He's good at it, but there's 5 seconds on the shot clock, and it's so hard to get involved in the game as teammates in that scenario. So I'll put him 2 just because I don't know what the Hawks are about to do, but I think Jaws 1 for sure.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I think out of those three guys, Ja's the guy that I'm putting my money in. I've put the most money into him, literally. And then Luka is probably, though, maybe the safest throughout his career, because I could see him, like, he may never win a championship, but I could see him being like almost like the Jazz back when they had Malone and Stockton, where they're like always in the conference finals and
Right.
like, potentially making it to the once we're past sort of the current era of Golden State and Steph, and then LA with LeBron but actually that's a good segue into my next question. So there's a bunch of huge names that are all down right now in terms of their card prices, and it's mainly because the whole NBA market's been down the last couple months due to just attention being elsewhere. Like, you've had attention on the holidays. The whole card market's down during the holidays. Then it comes back up and corrects itself in January. You've had some injuries. You've had COVID. You've had replacement players because of COVID. It's kind of the middle of the NBA season, so some of the early hype is worn off. You've got obviously the Super Bowl coming up, so you just a lot of attention off the NBA in the sports card market right now, and the opportunity is huge to buy like the superstars really at like their floor. So you've got guys like AD, Jokic, Embiid, Kyrie, Harden, and let's say Booker. Like, those are all really good buys right now, not only because they're high potential to win a championship, or at least compete for a championship this season, but because they're also like basically Hall of Famers. And so regardless of what happens this season, they're going to have a solid market. One more name I need to throw in there. He's a little bit more expensive, but I think he falls in the same category as Steph Curry. If you're investing in Steph Curry, it's more like you're investing in LeBron or Tom Brady, but from a price standpoint. But being that he is not only still active, but he's basically like a huge contender to win a championship again this year, we got to throw him in there. So again, like if you, all things equal, if you had, let's say, $500 to $1,000 to invest in rookie cards of Embiid, Jokic, Steph, Booker, AD, and also we got to let's throw Giannis in there.
Okay.
Sorry, let's also throw Durant in there. Okay. So basically we're looking at like the top guys in each conference. Basically what I'm asking you to do is like pick the conference finals and then pick the NBA finals and then pick the champion. Because I think your answer to essentially that question is going to answer like whose cards to buy, kind of in that order. So how do you see like the NBA playoffs playing out as we're heading into February?
That's tough this year. I think the NBA is very I think it's the most competitive we've seen the NBA in a long time. Because there's legitimately 4 teams that I think could win it, and I feel like right now, now I'm obviously not always right. At this point in the season, I feel like there's 1 or 2 teams where I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I love Phoenix's game. I love watching them play because Chris Paul, it just seems like the older he gets, the better he is at helping teams win. He just goes anywhere and helps them win. And fortunately, he's found a home in Phoenix that makes them a serious threat because of all of these talented young guys. Obviously, Booker, DeAndre Ayton, I'm huge on him. And the way that Chris Paul has been able to form DeAndre Ayton's game and show him where to be off ball and movement and pick and roll and all that has been huge for them. So it's tough for me. I think it's going to be obviously Golden State playing Phoenix to get to the finals, but it's very difficult for me to say with confidence who would win that. I think that Golden State's extremely deep. If you look, they're 1 through 10. I like every single guy. You look at Gary Payton II. You look at Jordan Poole. All these guys can come off the bench and have a massive impact. And I don't know if I can say that quite as much about Phoenix, which makes me feel good about Golden State. Steph, I think, is having his worst percentage shooting year of his career, and they're still where they are in the standings, which speaks volumes. Obviously, when Draymond gets back, they're going to be a completely better team. So I think I got to take Golden State out of the West. My question for you is how much of Steph Curry's legacy is already baked into his valuation, right? So if you're, and I'm going to talk about it from a fan basis. If you're a fan of Steph Curry, I think his card will jump, assuming he wins a chip. But I feel like all these people that are not big on Steph Curry, like his legacy is already done for them. Like they've already submitted what they think he's going to be and what his value was to the league. So it's like, okay, he won 3 or 4 rings, like whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. That's a good question. And I think it kind of like, it applies to everybody who is interested in buying sports cards. So, and I think everyone kind of falls into both categories because like, even though I'm a sports card investor and this show is really about investing, I think part of me is also like, okay, but I could also be a collector. So there's also like this angle that I could keep the card, right? So to answer your question, I think you're talking about somebody who would personally collect the card. It would be in their PC. They want a Steph Curry card. For those people, I would say wait until after he retires. Like wait several years until after his legacy's already written.
Mm-hmm.
At some point after he retires, after he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, his card prices will hit a floor and you will be able to buy whatever Steph Curry card you want, probably at its floor. And that's probably like a year or so after he retires and gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. So we're talking about like, if you want to buy and keep a Steph Curry card, like let's say in your family for the next several decades, that would be the way that I would acquire a Steph Curry card because so much of his legacy is already baked into his card prices. If you want to make money in the next 24 months on Steph Curry cards, you might be able to find some gradual dips to where maybe it goes down 5%, maybe even 10% just based on market factors. But you better be damn sure that he's going to win a championship or break Wilt Chamberlain's all-time points in a game record or just something ridiculous. Like you better be sure that he's going to do something ridiculous. So I hope that answers your question. I think it's like, It's like, okay, there is a lot baked in is the short answer. The long answer is what I just said. It's like, there's going to be a million opportunities to buy Steph Curry cards. You have to make the decision. If you want to invest and try to make money over the next 24 to 36 months, that's a different ball game. It's riskier than if you just want to PC Steph Curry for like 50 years. Then I think there's going to be a window like after he retires, there's no more hype. He's just a legend. There's going to be like an ultimate floor for his card value. And that's when you buy him if you don't care about making money off his cards.
Gotcha. I think that changes my answer for who I think is going to win a chip this year versus who I would invest in out of the big stars. But I will get to that. Coming from the East, I have to go with Giannis. I think he's the new LeBron of the league. I think the league is his right now. He is, man, talk about a guy that's tough not to like. Like, he's just so happy to be here, like, loves his teammates, loves his family, and has nothing negative to say about anyone, which I think is awesome. It's really easy to pull for guys like that. And he is turning Milwaukee into a big market for basketball, which is incredible. I think he comes out of the East. Unfortunately, the Nets, I mean, injuries, COVID, who's playing, who's not. It's just, I really would have liked to see them all play together. I think we've only got to see like 12 games or something of them on the floor. So for that inconsistency, I love KD. I think he's the best scorer of all time, but I'm going to go with Giannis and the Bucks. And the Bucks versus the Warriors, I'd probably take the Warriors. But I think if we're talking stars, I'm picking Booker to invest in.
Okay.
Because I think when Chris Paul gets out, the Suns are probably going to have to go into a rebuilding phase at some point because I just think he's holding that entire team together with his wisdom, his infinite wisdom. And I'm curious to see if Booker wants to get to a new market and play with another really big young star. And I think, you put him in a big market with a really good team and some good pieces. I mean, I think he's the best young scorer in the league. So I go Booker.
Yeah. I think that's something to think about too with Booker is that it sure as hell looks like the Western Conference Finals is like the worst that the Suns are going to do this year.
Right.
And so I like Booker to the end of, all right, if you were to buy Booker, say in February, you're probably buying at a season low, because then you're looking at Booker making it to the Western Conference Finals. And assuming that happens, you'll have a long selling window. Like you'll have a window of to make your decision. Like, does it look like you'll probably have games 1, game 2, and game 3 to sort of assess of the Western Conference Finals. Does it look like Phoenix can win? And if they do, then you hold Booker's card to the NBA Finals. But if you feel like, okay, Golden State's going to overtake them, you could sell Booker probably still at a season high at that point, just on the back of an amazing performance and then people wanting to acquire him before the NBA Finals, because there's going to be a lot of people still thinking that the Suns can win. So there'll be a selling window, even if you don't think Phoenix can beat Golden State, or even if you think they can come out of the West, if you don't think they're gonna take it all the way. I think I like Booker for that reason. I like your pick on Milwaukee. I look at the East and I just see it's like Miami, Chicago, Philly right now, Cleveland. I don't really believe – I love those 4 teams and I love what they've done, but I don't really believe that any of them can beat Milwaukee in the playoffs. And I don't really believe Brooklyn can beat Milwaukee in the playoffs either. So I just think that I'm hesitant to spend money on a lot of guys. And a couple more questions for you before we wrap up. A few guys not in my top 50 right now in the sports card investment report at nooffseason.com/invest. Atop the East, Jimmy Butler, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Kyrie, Harden, Beal, Embiid. None of those guys that are in the East are in my top 50. Some of them, like, I know why, and it's pretty obvious to me. But even Jason Tatum's not in my top 50. So what's your take on, like, obviously I think the Jimmy Butler play would be if you think the Heat are going to make it to the finals. I think kind of the same thing with DeRozan and LaVine, although you might have a different take on LaVine because he's still pretty young. And then Tatum, like, interested to your take just on him as a long-term guy, not necessarily this year, but as a long-term guy.
Yeah. Man, I wish I actually thought about this last night when I was thinking about coming on here. I was like, I wonder if we'll talk about DeMar DeRozan. Because I think if for short term, if you were buying this year and could have known the year that he was going to have, before he got traded, people were talking about it being the worst move of the offseason. I wish he was 5 years younger because he could be doing some scary things in Chicago. His highlights, he looks like Kobe right now. The stuff he's doing in mid-range and in the post is incredible. I was huge on the Bulls in the preseason, huge on them early on. Obviously, they got some injuries right now, but I see why he's not in your top 50 because he's getting older and he's probably only got a couple more years where it's like he can be the workhorse if they want to try and win a chip. And I don't think Chicago's there yet. I think they're building something special. I love Lonzo Ball. I like Zach LaVine. He's just unbelievable scorer, like Alex Caruso. I think they're building a good nucleus of people who play the right way. Unfortunately, I think DeMar's kind of at the peak of that with his cane. And he's going to pass down his knowledge and hopefully, let them build something. So I agree on that. Got to ask how Joel Embiid's not your top 50 though, or your reasoning for it.
Yeah, the reasoning is, I think some of it a lot. You mentioned baked in with Curry, right? I think a lot of stuff is baked in with Embiid. I think there's always been a lot of hype around Embiid. I think sort of baked in MVP type stuff that doesn't always play out due to injury or just other people also being in the MVP category that get the votes, and sort of. Not being a guard actually hurts in sports card investing, which sucks because Embiid is like arguably the best player in the league.
Yeah.
Consistently. And so, but the real reason is that like his prices are super high. So really the only thing to spike him is going to be a championship. And so the only reason Embiid's not in my top 50 is because I just don't think the Sixers really have a realistic shot of winning a championship anytime soon. And so, and like if I were going to put, $1,000 to $4,000 down on like a solid Embiid rookie, which is kind of what it's going to take to really make some money off of Embiid, in order to make that back and then some, the Sixers are going to have to win a championship. But if you think if you think the Sixers are going to win a championship, that's a play. Like that's a huge play because Embiid wins a championship and now all of a sudden he's other level. Like he kind of can do no wrong for the rest of his career, and his card prices will probably never. They would probably like 4 or 5x and then never come down from there. So if you own Embiid right now, or if you buy Embiid right now, if you own Embiid right now, you're sitting pretty. But if you got to kind of have a lot of balls to buy Embiid right now for that reason.
Gotcha. Yeah, my thought process is and it's funny, obviously looking at it from an investment standpoint versus just like NBA statistical standpoint is very different. But I'm not huge on the bandwagon that they could win a chip either, but I like Tobias Harris. Thibault is probably the best perimeter defender in the league. I think they have some good pieces. And if we look back and in the off scenario that it's like, hey, Joel Embiid just won a championship with Ben Simmons sitting out for the entire year, and he averaged 32 and 11 as a 7-1 center. It could be one of the best seasons of all time. But I guess that is a huge risk to take, assuming they even make it deep in the playoffs. I guess that's where my valuation would be for him. No,
not to cut you off, but Embiid, like, just to correct myself, like his Prism PSA 10, 2014 Prism-based PSA 10 base is around $300 right now. It's actually up 41% over the last 30 days, like due to his performance. So if you would have bought Embiid a month ago, then you actually could make 41%. So it isn't. I wasn't totally accurate a second ago. I think what I was thinking is more like his higher end, like his Prism Silver. Let's check his Prism Silver. Yeah, so his Prism Silver is it's up 12% over the last 30 days. It's $2,100 in PSA 10. So it just kind of depends. Like the reason why not to buy the base is because of the higher pop count. Like it's just easier to get. Lower population count on the silver, that's what drives up the price. And that's going to be a rule that really kind of goes across all players. But I mean, the reason I ask you about him is because it's like, should he be in my top? Like, is this a guy that I'm just like totally missing out on having in my top 50? Like, am I an idiot for not having him in my top 50? And considering that his prices have gone up over the last 30 days, 41%, maybe that answers my question. Like, maybe, like, does he keep this up, Conner, over the next 3-4 months of the NBA season to where it just keeps going up? And like, is he a buy now where there's actually some room in that, maybe that not that high end card, but that Prism and some of his other base cards?
Yeah, I'm assuming that and not a large portion, but I'm assuming there's a small portion of where you're mentioning that guards are more valuable than posts. Obviously, there's a lot of factors for that, but I'm assuming a small portion is probably durability. And that's obviously a worrisome part for Embiid. So if we're looking long-term for Joel Embiid, as dominant as he is right now, and he's probably the best – I don't know if we're counting KD as a 7-footer, but he's probably the best 7-footer in terms of skill, touch, everything that we've ever seen. I mean, I can't think of anyone else that can hit a step back three that's 7'1" consistently. I think we have to factor in how long can his body take the stress that it's taking night in and night out for a number of years. Short term, I think you're probably spot on just because, we kind of know that Philadelphia is not really where it needs to be a contender, especially with the upside, obviously, is that if they win without Ben Simmons, it looks amazing. But the downside and probably the reality of it is that they need to make a move and get some pieces around them so they can win now.
Yeah, so I've thrown us off track a little bit here, but like Giannis is 27, Embiid's 27, Jokic is 26. If you look at Giannis's same card and Giannis's 1 year before Embiid in terms of his rookie cards. So Giannis's Prism 2013 base PSA 10 is $1,400. And that is not far off from where it was at this time last year. So basically like the championship caused it to spike huge, and it has since kind of come back down to where it was. And that's just kind of how this thing always flows. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's appropriate though. Like you've got Giannis 1,400, same card for Embiid 300. Embiid doesn't have that championship. So maybe Embiid is the better buy. Like if maybe comparing Giannis and Embiid, if you're looking at making money over the next like 4 months, cross your fingers with injury. But if Embiid stays healthy, it looks like maybe there's more room for growth in that Embiid investment than there is in the Giannis. So.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're assuming that Giannis has a chance to win a ring this year, wouldn't we expect to see a crazy spike just like you saw? So maybe I don't know. Maybe Giannis is the better buy there because they could very easily win the championship again this year. And if we look at Giannis going on a streak of winning multiple ships in multiple years, the things that's going to do for already how dominant he is and the stats that he puts up, I don't know.
He gets into maybe top 10. He gets into maybe top 6, top 7 of all time if Giannis wins another championship this year or next year. I think he's in that category. So let's break this down. All right. Embiid is a buy now if he stays healthy and really doesn't have to do anything major in the playoffs for you to make money off him. Giannis is the better buy of the two based on who's more likely to win the championship. That's kind of what we're saying.
Agreed.
So that's interesting. Thank you for helping me break down Embiid because and Booker, by the way, because I've been thinking a lot about Booker, Embiid, and Jimmy Butler lately. Like, am I missing something? Like, because I don't have any Embiid cards, I don't have any Booker cards, and I don't have any Jimmy Butler cards. So let's toss Butler in to kind of wrap up this discussion, and then I have at least one more question I want to ask you about a particular player before we sign off.
Sure. Yeah. I think you're probably spot on with Jimmy. And I love Jimmy Butler. I think he's an absolute dog, and I love the dogs of the NBA. But we saw an incredible performance from him in the bubble, right? He was literally taking over, which is something that I thought was cool because when you look at Jimmy Butler, he's not this fluid, eccentric, shifty scorer, right? He's more get to his spots, hit the mid-range, get to the rim. Which in today's NBA is very difficult to be a consistent. I mean, he was putting up 30 just in the finals. For me, something about his game, as much as I love him on defense, I think he's a great leader. I don't think it translates to a ton of success, especially this late in his career, as your number one scoring option. Now, if Jimmy was like 2 years younger and we could see Tyler Hero a little bit more developed and they had a younger Kyle Lowry, I think they're a very, very serious threat in that scenario. But I think where everyone is in their careers right now, Tyler's still got some growing to do. He's going to be a stud. But, Kyle Lowry's on the downhill. Jimmy Butler's probably on the downhill. I think where you're thinking is in the right spot.
Yeah. Okay. So I can, yeah. If I had like an affinity for Jimmy Butler, like, I mean, I'm like you, I like Jimmy Butler, but like, I have a huge affinity for Giannis and for Draymond Green and for like, Magic Johnson. Like those are like the guys that are near and dear to my heart, for example. Jimmy Butler is just not, he's a good player, but like take him or leave him. So if I was, because I'm on the fence about Jimmy Butler as an investor, part of my tiebreaker is like, I don't love him. I don't go to bed like thinking about getting excited about watching Jimmy Butler play or wake up in the morning and get excited about watching Jimmy Butler in particular. So while I do think there could be money to be made on Jimmy Butler, I'm not going to buy him, and he's not in my top 50 kind of for the reasons that you stated. And I think you do have to take into consideration, like, if I am stuck with this card, am I pissed off or am I okay about it?
Right.
And so if if I'm stuck with a card that I lost 50% on and I don't really love the player, then I'm like, well, that sucks. Versus like, oh, I love the player. So, all right. So I want to ask you about Zion because his cards are down. Like everyone knows not to touch the guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But his cards are down. Like his Prism PSA 10, which is always kind of a good example to throw out there, is less than $200 right now. And it was over 1,000. Like it was like over 1,000. I mean, and then it was like, it's never going to dip below 800. This is low. And then it was like, it's never going to dip below 600. This is low. And now it's below $200. And we all know why. It's because he's like not even in the league right now. But now I'm faced with the decision of, okay, I own enough Zion to feel like I'm not necessarily missing out if I don't buy more. But I'm also like, shit, is he still Zion? Like, will he be, because here's the thing, Connor, if he's Zion for even like a 2-week pocket of time at any time, that goes from $193 card back up to like a $400, $500, $600, $700 card, like immediately. So sports card investors have to be looking at this going, what do I do? What happens with Zion?
Short answer is probably if you own him, hold, right? Because we know for a fact we don't know for a fact, but I would say 95% certainty he's going to make another run in the NBA. Like he's going to try and play in the league again. The tough part is the uncertainty of his game. If you look at him at Duke, you just watch a couple highlights of his play style at Duke versus play style in New Orleans. It's the exact same, but he's doing it a different way. Like at Duke, he's in the same spots, making the same shots, pure athleticism. In New Orleans, a year later, it was all body and strength. In transition, it looked like he had half the vertical. And he was learning they were teaching him how to re-walk correctly, hoping to increase his durability. And we talk about teaching a grown man how to walk to play in the NBA. That brings a lot of concerns up to me. Obviously, all the pictures of the weight gain, who knows what weight he was really at. But if he was pushing 300 pounds, the draw of his game was that he was so athletic and he was a freak. And the scare when he was athletic and a freak was that he didn't have the skill set, didn't have the touch, didn't have the three-point shooting. So we take away the freak aspect. Throws a lot of, uncertainty in the air. Obviously, injuries already that he's had so many. Obviously, definitely not a buy right now. I don't think. Maybe a hold if you're holding him, but I'm not big on Giannis or on Zion moving forward, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think that I would err on that side myself. I wanted to throw the question out there. I just think to really make money on it, right? You'd have to buy multiple of these. And if you're buying multiple of these, then all of a sudden you're spending close to $1,000. And wouldn't you rather have a Giannis? Wouldn't you rather have 3 Embiids? Wouldn't you rather have you could probably get 2-3 high-end Bookers, There's so many other places to put your money than Zion that I just think it's tempting, but it seems like sports card investors should just steer clear. Obviously hold what you have. Hope that he comes out and has a 2-3 week stretch where he puts up 30 a game and or gets traded to the Knicks or whatever. Those things would spike his prices. So yeah, that's a good call. All right, before we wrap up today's show, I wanna say that I would love to have you back. I've had a lot of fun. Hopefully when we have you back as a co-host, I'd like to break down because I know as a successful sports bettor, you have bankroll management, right? And I don't know what your individual bankroll management looks like, but I would assume that it has to have obviously you're only allocating a certain amount of your bankroll on any given night to any given play, blah, blah, blah. But maybe you're also micromanaging it to the point where you're like, well, I think these are higher, better odds, right? So I'm going to allocate X amount of my in-play bankroll towards safer bets, and I'm going to allocate X amount towards more riskier but sleeper bets. And so my example of that is like, how much of my sports card investment bankroll should I invest in guys like Kenyon Martin Jr., this is like the sleeper of all sleepers,
Right.
versus like Booker or Steph Curry, or like the more well-known guys. So I think that's a topic for another day. But just to get your brain going and get maybe some people in the comments want to drop some comments or some questions in for some future episodes that we could hit on. That would be awesome. So great having you on, man. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed talking. Obviously, it's good to speak with you. I'd love to do it again sometime. So hopefully we can find a date that I can wake up at 5:30 again, and we can make it work. But I appreciate you having me. Tell Kate I said hello, and then we'll talk soon.
We'll do. Sports Card Strategy Show with Paul Hickey and Conner Barnett. Brought to you by MarketMoversApp.com by Sports Card Investor. Go there, save 20% by using the promo code NOOFFSEASON, all lowercase. And when you pair that with our investment report at nooffseason.com/invest, you have the analysis and the data that you need to make your sports card investment decisions. And thanks again for watching and listening. And one more thing for Conner. I see the Sawgrass poster in the back. So when I'm back in Tennessee, we might need to link up and play some golf. Because,
Absolutely. I played in 30 degrees.
That's one thing I don't do enough of.
Yeah.
Did you really?
30 degrees. Yeah. So
Where
we need to
did
make
you
it
play?
happen. It's over in Trenton, Georgia. It's like 25, 30 minutes from downtown Chattanooga. So greens were rock hard. It was terrible. It was terrible.
All right. Well, I'm glad you got some swings in, man. All right. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Paul.
See you, man.